Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today we're actually going to be talking about the concepts of, is there such thing as a perfect film? Now, this is a very hefty thing to talk about because I think perfection is in the eye of the beholder, right? It is something that is subjective, and people view different things as something that is perfect or not perfect. Now, there are obviously examples of some types of films in the zeitgeist of the culture that a lot of people kind of grasp onto, and there's going to be some examples of that. Some things I can think of are like Jaws or Steven Spielberg's Indiana Jones, all the Spielberg movies. Some even like Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. There's things that a lot of people really adore, and you're going to see some of those examples too. But that concept of perfection, right, is a very interesting one. Like I said, it's subjective. It also kind of connects to whatever you're going through at the time, your life experiences, who you are as a person. And I think that really is what defines what perfection could potentially be in your eyes. And some people might not even believe in this concept of perfection, right? This thing like, well, there's always something flawed about whatever I'm watching, right? There's nothing perfect. And they love that beauty of it all. And honestly, I'm in the same boat sometimes, but obviously nostalgia and our own biases kick in, and that's the interesting thing. So today I wanted to tackle this a little bit, and I actually got this concept from my buddy Chris Mohan, and he actually made a video, please check it out in the description, talking about this very subject. In fact, actually he was responding to Solitary Ronin, posing this question. And I think this is a really interesting question. I would love to see more people kind of respond with their own video and see what they think about it, if not in the comment sections, right? I want to see, what is your concept of a perfect film, and could you list some of them? So today I'm gonna bring some of my films here, and a lot of them might be general things that a lot of people love, and I just want to share a little bit of my thoughts with it along the way, talking about this concept of perfection in film. All right, first and foremost, my love right here, Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is something that is just, it's beautiful, it's magical, right, in many sense. But I was in my preteen to teenage years in these years that these came out, 2001 through 2003, and I have a lot of really striking memories attached to this. And this is really a Neapolitan type of film. It's a film that really kind of grasped at my childlike wonder of action, adventure, and fantasy, and stuck little things in there like romance and horror that I necessarily wasn't ready for at that time, at least in my eyes, because at that time I was, like I said, heavily into these types of fantasy and action-oriented films. And you grew to love these characters, and over time, I mean, here we are many years later, 20 plus years in some cases, we are seeing, these films be revered and loved still by a lot of people, and a lot of people view these as perfect, and I could go on and on about them. And I even remember a time when I watched Return of the King with my uncle at the IMAX in 2003, and I remember looking over to him, and he was crying during a particular scene, and seeing that connection he had with a character because he grew up reading The Lord of the Rings, watching the Rankin Bass films, right? This whole thing is, it's all connected to what we know and what we've been exposed to, and seeing it unfold in front of us in this medium that we call film. It's just something that's beautiful, and it's never escaped my memory, and so it's certainly perfect. All right, moving right along, another early film that I watched early on, very in tandem with Lord of the Rings in a different way, more comedic probably, is The Princess Bride, right? Another fantastical film I just really adored as a kid and still adore it as an adult. In fact, I adore it more because I get more of it, and I understand Rob Reiner's humor and Carrie Ells' performance and Buttercup, and there's so many great things about this film. And a lot of people really love this movie, and I can't fault them, because there are a lot of perfect moments of this movie. It is that stereotypical kind of romance film attached with so many different flavors, and it's just something that you start to adore more and more, obviously in the sense of this realm that we call film, right? And this escapism is really an enjoyment thing, especially early on. So there is that nostalgia that kicks in. And The Princess Bride, I think, is a perfect example of that, and I think a perfect example for a lot of people, really. So yeah, what do you think about The Princess Bride? Do you love it as much as I do? Because I certainly think it's perfect. Now, moving right along with the same kind of thought in that fantasy realm, but also more in the comedic realm, is thinking a little bit about your disposition as when you were younger and what your personality was like. My personality was I was the class clown. I enjoyed comedy. I enjoyed very silly concepts and things in that ilk. And a film that perfectly encapsulates that is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. This was my first exposure to Monty Python as a troupe. Obviously, I could pick Life of Brian. In fact, I think Chris actually talked about Life of Brian. But the Holy Grail is just one of those films that is just utterly ridiculous and perfect in every way. And I think it's imperfect in so many ways. In fact, they even celebrate that imperfection, right? Horses, coconuts. But I think this is something that is just embedded into my mind as somebody who loves comedy, right? Thinking back to the type of comedy that I enjoyed back then, like Billy Madison or Kung Pao, right? And I still love those films. But I think Monty Python still holds up as an adult. In fact, so many people, this came out in 1975. I'm much younger than this. But that sheer fact that it still holds up is a testament to why it's perfect in my eyes. But yes, I couldn't be another perfect encapsulation of comedy in my book, especially British comedy, which is not for everybody, of course. Now, these next two films are films that I think Chris also talked about. And another concept of something that I was more afraid of growing up is something that I've almost embraced fully now as an adult. And that really does speak to why things like this are perfect, because these are maybe examples of something that, got over your fear, or you got over something that you necessarily didn't enjoy growing up or necessarily enjoy at all, and then you were exposed to the right thing at the right time. And it's just that is a perfect example of it. And I'm talking about The Thing right here. This is Arrow Video's The Thing. It's a little shaky. It's a little loose right here in its disc case, but The Thing is just a perfect horror film. And, like I said, I didn't like horror films growing up. It's not something that I necessarily loved. It was something that I was a little bit afraid of. But from that fact that I do have something to kind of showcase my love of the genre itself and the creativity behind it, is just that it's a perfect thing with the score, the atmosphere, the acting, practical effects. There's a million things to talk about with The Thing, and that I think that is a testament to this, and I think a reason why a lot of people consider this one of their favorite horror movies of all time. It's just perfect in that sense, and The Thing is a great example of something that made me overcome something that I didn't necessarily appreciate beforehand. It's just perfect. All right, moving right along to another film that, like I said, Chris mentioned was Pan's Labyrinth. Another film that kind of tackles in that fantasy realm. You can notice the theme with me, I really like fantasy. But with Pan's Labyrinth, this really hits the realistic side of things because it kind of combined history, actual history, with that emotive drama that you would see in a film, right? This is one of the more serious, dark fantasy films that also dealt with some adult concepts that this really just hooked into me. And I think it's a beautiful way to tell a story because it's really impactful, right? It kind of drags people in who necessarily wouldn't want to watch maybe a Spanish Civil War film, and they add that concept of that childlike innocence that exists on top of it with fantasy. And this is just something that I think is beautiful and masterful in the sense for a lot of people, right? And I think that balance of that childlike innocence mixed in with the atrocities of war is just something that really can speak to a lot of people, and it makes it really rewatchable for some reason. Because even though this is a very tragic film, and I think that emotion that we connect to it is really, really important. And I think that's another reason why, empathy is incredibly important in the concept of when you're watching a film and what it does to you, and in the moments where you necessarily can't be in the same spot as this character, but you can kind of see what it would be like. Right? And I think that's what Pan's Labyrinth does for me. Now, another perfect film that maybe would come a little bit later on in my life, but I remember watching growing up, but just wouldn't hit or click with me as a child, but more so in my later teenage years and early 20s, was It's a Wonderful Life. And this is a lot of people's favorite Christmas movie, right? And there's a reason why that's the case. Jimmy Stewart is just phenomenal, and we also have Donna Reed. And Frank Capra, just directs such a perfect, well-executed film. And I think it really does depend on where you are at life when you're watching something like this, because there are a lot of themes in this film. It is very general audience, but there's also some adult things that, you probably would not have picked up, a lot of people, not everybody, wouldn't have picked up as they were younger, right? And It's a Wonderful Life is a great example of something that is classic and is a staple that a lot of people can see, just that brilliance and that perfection in the screenwriting, in the script, and the emotions that you feel with the characters themselves, and really kind of just shows you how wonderful life can actually be, right? And I don't want to just use the title itself, but it really is perfectly apt for the movie itself. So It's a Wonderful Life. It's perfection. Now, kind of piggybacking on that concept of fear, but thinking about when you started really getting into the medium itself and kind of noticing different things. That's a thing that's really interesting to me, and many people who have watched this channel know that that's something that I like to kind of examine when I'm doing a film journey with people that I've met over this beautiful time on YouTube. And I think that is a very beautiful time because a lot of us are in that exploratory phase, and just that concept of seeing something for the first time, even though maybe it's a staple for a lot of people, and really affecting you maybe in a way that can really just impress upon you, and just you keep going. It's a trajectory thing. So I'll just give you an example of a film that just it made me fall in love with the genre even more, and also fall in love with movies even more. And that would be Charles Lofton's The Night of the Hunter. And this is just a chilling film. A film that, like I said, it's just noticing all the perfections of it, just kind of made me want to keep going, right? And made me want to just delve further into these different types of genres and subgenres that would come from this, and might make me go down a rabbit hole, right, of sorts, and make me appreciate film as a whole. And this is one of those films that I would consider to be a starter film. And when I say that, I mean this will be a film that makes you want to watch more films, and that's why it's perfect for me. And yeah, there couldn't be a better example of something that is so disturbing that you're like, I gotta watch more. Now, tying a little bit back to that original thought of the Lord of the Rings and that conceptual fantasy side of things, now we're going to talk about that concept of romance. In fact, this whole thing is very juvenile, I would say, but this is a film that kind of hooked me, just like The Night of the Hunter did in my early 20s when I was exploring film in general. And it has never let go, and I've rewatched it since and still love it, even though there are things about it that just about the human condition of romance and love. And I'm talking about the Before trilogy right here. In fact, you can't see it off screen, but I have these posters in my room. It's above me here. But Richard Linklater's trilogy with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. I've mentioned this many times on the channel, but I'm a romantic, and that's part of my personality. And things that can kind of represent that on top of the concepts of just having a conversation and that communication that involves that nonverbal and that verbal communication, and that connection part really speaks to me. And I think, even though, like I said, there are moments of maturity and juvenile, that human condition of, we love each other and we hate each other, these back and forth things, it really is perfectly encapsulated in the concept of the Before trilogy in my eyes. And so that's why I love this trilogy so much, and I love these characters so much, is because it just shows you how flawed we are as humans. And yeah, so Before trilogy, I think it's perfect, and I would highly recommend you checking this out if you haven't. All right, we're almost through with this, but I do want to show you another film that I view as perfect in almost every concept. So outside of Lord of the Rings, this is the film that I mentioned as my favorite of all time, and it's one that was definitely exposed to me at the right time. I was working at a record store, and I was just exploring music as well, and going different routes, and kind of exposing myself to things that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with, but because of the environment where I was, it really did help me flourish as somebody who enjoyed the medium of different type of art forms, right? Music, books, movies. And one of those movies that just stuck with me and I've seen 25 plus times is In Bruges. And In Bruges is directed by Martin McDonagh, starring Colin Farrell, Ray Fiennes, and Brendan Gleeson, and is just really this small little dark comedy, right? Set in Belgium, Bruges, Belgium, and it's a little Irish film. And it's a movie that I think has definitely gotten a lot more attention over the last few years, and I'm so happy it did, because like I said, I'll never shut up about this movie because I love it so damn much. And yeah, this is a movie that I think really spoke to me at that time, but also keeps speaking to me, even though there are some things that might not be, they're dated, right? But the thing is about it is it hits all those things that I mentioned before, right? It hits that concept of, okay, what's my personality? Okay, I like comedy, right? I like fantasy. I like all this darkness kind of mixed in with the light, that juxtaposition that's going on in film, and that imperfection that we're seeing, and the relationships between characters. And you can see all that in the films that I've mentioned earlier. And that whole concept, it just comes all together beautifully in my eyes in Bruges. And it takes a while. It didn't hit me at first when I first watched this movie, but I definitely loved it the first time I watched it. But once I watched it again, I just kept falling deeper and deeper in love, and I just think it's perfect. And I honestly don't think Martin McDonagh can make a better film. Don't quote me. I don't want that to happen. I know he's actually reuniting some of these people later on, but yeah, this is just a movie that perfectly encapsulates who Nathan Jones is, right? And I think at the end of the day, that's what we're going for, right? We're looking for films that encapsulate who you are, right? And I think that's what I want this video to kind of showcase. And last, I want to mention something somber. I know I'm ending on a sad note, but a film that I've only actually watched once, but it has made such an impact on me that it is so perfect in my eyes that I don't know if I want to revisit that again. But I'm talking about A Ghost Story right here. And I've mentioned this before on the channel. I actually have a poster right over there. This is directed by David Lowery and is starring Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck, and is love it or hate it, people enjoy this movie or not. But I remember what I was going through at the time, and I think that's what I want to mention is there are certain films that we think are perfect because it really does capture a moment in time of when we were exposed to it. And I've mentioned that a few times, but that spatial and that temporal relation that we have with the medium and what we're going through at the time really can make an impact and what makes it perfect for us. And A Ghost Story was such a cathartic experience for me that I actually even wrote something for my master's degree when I was writing in college. And I talked a little bit about A Ghost Story and why it kind of awakened this concept in me and what I wanted to write going forward. And it's something that is very personal to me, and I think that personal is that perfection, right? And that it's that personal connection that we have with something that really is indescribable to another person. And you can try to describe it in the best way possible, but it's something that you really can emote or express in a way that other people will understand. It's an intrapersonal thing. So anyway, that is some of the films that I think are perfect in my eyes, and it all is, like I said, dependent on yourself and you, right? I want to know what your concept of the perfect film is, or whether or not you even believe in that concept. I want to know in the comment section down below. This was a lot of fun. I want to thank Chris for bringing this concept up for me, and I wanted to share that with the world. So there's going to be a lot of things coming up on the channel, and I'm going to be doing a Criterion flash sale haul when it all comes in the mail. I also have some other things that I've picked up for the month of March, and yeah, I'm finishing up all the Hauntsby Hours folk box set from Severn Films. I'm almost done with it, so I'm almost done with those last two movies, and then I'll express it in my last video with that. But a lot of things coming up. I hope everyone's enjoying, life as best as they can. I know it's tough right now with a lot of things going on in the world. And I think this is a better time than ever to talk about things that we love, right? And that's the reason why I wanted to express this video. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Comment down below, share, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.